This video is a detailed deck list and breakdown of Leviamon X-Antibody. I've had a fair amount of practice with the deck at this point, and I feel very comfortable with it, and I feel like my thoughts on it are very solidified at this point in the meta. So I just wanted to go ahead and talk about it, talk about my strategies I use, and why I've made each of the decisions when building this deck. If you just want to screenshot the deck list, here it is. You can screenshot it, go on your way. But for anybody else who's interested in watching more and learning about the deck, let's get right into it. The name of the game with this deck is efficiency. We just want to maximize the memory we're using. We want our turns to be very efficient, and we also want to be cycling a lot of our cards and getting all of our pieces as quickly as possible. So this deck is very much oriented towards doing that and closing out games quickly, because you don't have to spend as much time controlling the board or as much time thinking about how to deal with a Leviamon matchup or when to pop your biting crushes or all that as you would with some deck lists. If you're just winning quickly and you're seeing all your pieces when you need them and you're doing more on your turns than you're letting your opponent do on their turns. So to get started with this breakdown, we'll talk about our egg. We're just using Sunomon. It's the best egg in the slot. It lets you draw cards every turn just about, and it lets you cycle a little more quickly, get to the pieces you need. Not much more to say about it. The first level 3 we're going to be using, and this is the one we want to see most of the time, is Goblimon. Now, I think this card has been used a lot, and I think some people don't really understand why, but think of this card as if it said, when you Digivolve, decrease the cost by 1. And that's how this card works a lot of the time. So anytime you're going into any of your level 4s, you're going to be cycling cards. You're going to be trashing a card from your hand because every single one of them has a when digivolving effect that does that. And that is going to trigger the gain 1 memory here. So basically this decreases your Evo cost by 1 for every single one of your level 4 Evos, and can even come up in later turns if you continue to trash cards on the same stack. It's a super good card, and you should 100% be running it at 4. Next, we're running 4 Gabumons. This is once again just looking for memory efficiency. It's going to gain 1 at the start of your turn in most circumstances. Usually your opponent will at least have something on the board for you to gain that memory off of. And then the extra cycle when you're attacking can come up. It can be nice if you need to get a card into the trash. It's just a good card and is kind of just a generic level 3 at the moment, and there's just not really anything I'd rather have in the slot. The next couple rookies are going to be our 1-ofs and 2-ofs, so we're only running 2 Gizamons, and that's because it kind of is only going to be used efficiently when you're playing it from your Cerberusmon X. So what the ideal play is here is you're going to play it out with your Cerberusmon X. You'll use its ability to give an on deletion, lose 1 memory to one of your opponent's Digimon, and then you'll Evo into Levia or Levia X and pop that Digimon and gain memory off of it. So once again, it's just added memory efficiency, and the inherited effect can come up whenever you're using your Dragomon, but that's more niche and not going to come up too often. But this is just kind of another memory efficiency piece, but we're only running it at 2 since it's not going to come up all the time. We're running 2 Gazimon in the deck. It is a Floodgate, as everybody knows. It's very good. It's going to help you a lot in your Leviamon matchup so they don't just outpace you, because they require a lot of memory gain to make their plays happen a lot of the time, especially if you're putting them at low memory. There's a few other matchups it can come up in. I mean, lots of decks will gain memory, so it's always just good if you know that they're going to need to gain some memory, or if they have a memory boost on the field, you can use this to kind of slow them down a bit and make sure that you're just not going to get outpaced if you're maybe a little bricked or if you're still building your stack. I am still running 1 Psychemon in the deck, and a lot of people aren't at this point in the meta, especially now that we're not seeing Apocalypse, not as much Anubismon since it's restricted to 1. We're not seeing as much of that. This is still there because there are going to be some rogue decks that you're going to run into, either in regionals or locals, whatever you're playing in, that this card can slow down their strategy enough to where it can win you the game, such as if you do run into a Royal Knights, X-Ross, Hunters, even Devas has been seen a lot in the meta lately, and I think we might see more of that deck because it is performing well and it actually has a good matchup into Leviamon and into some other very strong decks. So this can kind of help you slow down their plays and even prevent them from being able to go into a very large boss monster that is going to win the game for them. So this can be an important piece, and we're just running it at 1 because this is an efficient deck, so we'll usually see it if we need it, and we don't want to see it against all the decks where it's just a dead card. Now getting into our level 4s, we'll start with the least exciting one, which is going to be Garurumon. We are running it at 4, but once again, that's just because it is a generic good level 4. It can also go into your Garurumon X for free and get you some extra cycle and memory there, so it can be good. Usually if you're going into Garurumon, you're going to be doing it off of a wisdom training because you don't really want to be paying too much on your evos, so you want to make sure that that one is free since you can reduce your evo cost on pretty much any other evo that you're going into. So go ahead and pop your wisdom training going into Garurumon. It'll help you out a lot. The security effect can sometimes come up. Play a Gabumon from hand or trash. That's always nice. Unless you're trying to keep your board smaller than your opponent's because you need to get an extra pop with Leviamon, or you need to delete a tamer. So don't just use it every time. Make sure you check board state first, but usually it can be nice if it comes up. But that's not super often. Then we have Garurumon's bigger, badder, older brother, Garurumon X-Antibody. This is just an amazing card for the deck. You can use it to evo off of your Garurumon, which will then net you extra. I mean, that's 3 extra draws there, which is just amazing. And then you gain a memory at the end, so you're netting a memory from the evo. Very good. You can also just protoform straight into this. So if you're doing that off of a Goblimon, let's say, you can evo from Goblimon with your proto form. That's going to reduce the cost by 1. Then you will be evoing for a cost of 2, but you'll gain a memory when you trash the cards with Garurumon X-Antibody's when Digivolving effect. And then you will also gain a memory because you have X-Antibody and sources, making it a free evo. So that's very good. So don't think that just because you don't have a Garurumon that you should not go into Garurumon X. It can still be totally free and very good. The amount of cycling this card does, and the inheritable, which is also very good, pretty much gives you jamming, is just so strong, and that's why this card has been limited to 1, but we are going to use it as much as possible. It's also with our protoform. We're going to be grabbing this card a lot back from our trash because it's just so good. Our next level 4 that we are running at 4 is Leviamon X-Antibody. Just kind of think of this as a miniature Garurumon X. It has less cycle, but it is an X-Antibody, so you can also use the proto form and a Goblimon to evo into it for free. So that's very nice, and the inheritable is also good. You know, can get you some more memory later on. That's great, and the on-play effect that happens when you do have the X-Antibody in sources, or if you're playing this off a Dragomon, or just hard playing in general, really doesn't come up that much in this deck. Levia typically isn't swinging into anything smaller than it, and it doesn't have blocker, and nothing else in the deck does either that I'm using, so you're not going to really use that retaliation that much, but it's there for niche situations. On to our level 5s. We're running 4 Leviamon X-Antibody. This is an incredible card. It just is a X-Antibody, which is super strong because once again you can protoform into it. Or if you've already used your protoform, you can just use your wisdom training to make this a cheaper evo. It'll play out a level 3, which will then give you a body to use with its inheritable, which will let you unsuspend. Being able to swing twice with Leviamon or Leviamon X-Antibody can often win you the game that turn, because you'll usually have at least something else on the board to then follow up. It's very strong. This is an incredible card, and you should 100% be running it at 4. We're using 2 Dragomons in the deck. This is a little bit better than Warusidramon, in my opinion, just because it has an on-play. This is nice if you need to trigger a Leviamon X-Antibody in order to evo into it for free. Say you've gone protoform into a Leviamon X-Antibody and then evo into Dragomon. You can force your opponent to play out a level 4 or level 3 from their trash, and then you can also match it with your own body, and you will then be able to evo into a Leviamon X from your trash, which is very nice. You can also just use it as an on-play if you already have a separate stack that you want to evo into, say with a Cerberusmon X if you want that unsuspend. It's a good utility card and just a good alternate level 5. You're definitely going to want to be going into your Cerberusmon most of the time, but sometimes Dragomon is the card that you need, or if you're just not seeing the Cerberus, this is good. But once again, just at 2 since it is our alternate Evo. On to the big boys of the deck. This is the very scary Gator. He's the man. This is the reason that this deck works. This is just a very strong level 6. You may be wondering why you haven't seen Biting Crushes at the start of the list to play Leviamon for free, but the truth is that it's just more memory efficient to Evo into Leviamon because this is such an efficient Evo line all the way up to it, and then you have inheritables to play off of. So it's better just to Evo into Leviamon. It's just very strong. It's got the same effects when digivolving as it does when being played, and there's less setup that goes into doing that, and you net more cards along the way. So that's why we're not using the Biting Crushes. We're just Evoing straight into Leviamon. If you're desperate, you could play him for 13. I wouldn't recommend it in most situations, but sometimes that is all you can do. Anyways, the alterns effect to gain a memory is super strong because often you're going to try and pop a wisdom training if you can, but even if you don't, you're evoing into this for 5, but you're going to usually gain 2 memory back, which is very nice. So you can pretty much do this for 3, and then it's got security attack +1, and that all turns can come up later on. It's not like it's just limited to the turn that he comes down on the board. He also has the benefit of being able to go straight into the Leviamon X, either from your trash or your hand. Trash can be a little better since it's for free, but sometimes just evoing for 2 from the hand is very good as well, just if you need that extra security attack plus in there, so you're swinging for 3 checks instead of 2, and also to pop your opponent's board. Just a really strong card, and he is the main guy of the deck. Next is the even scarier Gator. We are also running it at 3 in this deck. Leviamon X-Antibody is such a good card. You can use it as a trap. Say you have a Cerberusmon X-Antibody with a protoform, or anything with a protoform on the board that's level 5, or if you have your Leviamon on board, you can pretty much just leave him in your trash, and your opponent is forced to play around the fact that if they play a card by an effect, he is going to come down and he is going to eat their board, and then he is a huge threat on your turn whenever it comes back to you. Being able to pop a Tamer is also super relevant in this meta. Lots of decks are Tamer heavy. It's not as great into decks like Leviamon or anything that has Mind Link, because a lot of those can still grab their Tamers back from the trash, but a lot of other decks can't do that. And if you remove their Tamer, they're going to have to then basically find a way to get it back out on the board, and they've lost a lot of momentum. Meanwhile, you have a Leviamon X-Antibody on the board that's about to swing their entire security. So it can be very game changing, and this is a very, very strong card. Our final Digimon in the deck is Shine Greymon Ruin Mode. I used to not play this card, but the truth is that this card just wins you games sometimes. If your opponent has a level 3 or level 4 that has less than 5,000 DP in their raising area, and you've just cleared their board with Leviamon X-Antibody or Leviamon, sometimes just going into a Ruin mode can shut out their turn, and sometimes 2 turns, and that can just win you the game, because then you have free turns to just either swing because they have no security left, or just kind of set up for your next stack if you are in a situation where you need to. But this card just wins games. It's super strong. The minus 5k to the board twice in a row, very good, and then also it will recover cards for you. It's just such a good card. I only play it at 1 because you usually find it by the time you need it, is the truth. You could definitely run this at 2 if you really wanted to, but I just don't find it necessary. We are on to our option cards. Seventh Lightning is a very interesting card because I used to not really believe in it. I thought Biting Crush was just a better card, as it had a little more utility, and I didn't fully understand why you would want 7th Lightning. But the truth is, as I talked about earlier, Biting Crush is just not memory efficient. And what 7th Lightning does is it will usually let you clear that level 6 that they have on board, which is very good because you want Leviamon to actually clear the board and not just leave their level 6 boss monster there when he does. You can also use multiple 7th Lightnings at the same time. Say they have a War Greymon or Alphamon or anything that has a layer or two of protection. You can just pop multiple of these on the same Evo and get rid of their whatever they have. So this is going to be the card you prioritize trashing whenever you are using your cycling effects. So whenever you draw one, trash one, if you have one of these in hand, go ahead and trash it because you don't really want to use it for the 7 memory. You always want to be using this for free because once again, as I've said a bunch of times, I'll say it again, this deck is all about memory efficiency and it does a lot of things for free, so let it do that. Don't slow yourself down by hard playing this, thinking, oh, well, I'll play it and then trash another one, maybe it'll be good. No, just don't do it. You have cards that will cycle your cards, so just let the deck play the way it wants to, and you'll be in good hands. We are running 4 purple memory boosts. You may think, this is BT15. Why are we running 4 memory boosts? We have wisdom trainings. Decks are more efficient. This deck already draws a lot of cards. I know. I get it. However, you want the memory gain for your big turns. And more importantly, this deck relies super strongly on having a strong start. You want your first and second turn plays to really set you up, then to ramp and keep up with these super fast decks in the meta, such as Leviamon, other Leviamons. You might see a Nubismon. Red Hybrid is crazy fast, especially with the Ukomon package, so you need to be moving as fast as they are, and you cannot risk being bricked on turn 1 or turn 2. So we are running 4 Wisdom Trainings and 4 Purple Memory Boosts, just because we want to make sure that we can find our pieces, and quite frankly, if you don't need them, you can just trash them whenever you don't have anything else you want to trash in your hand, because once we do get our pieces, we don't really need these anymore, and you can just throw them away. We're also obviously running 4 wisdom trainings. The training cards are just super, super good. You want to be using it very frequently. Keep in mind when using, if you are not going to make a big play on your turn, don't end your turn by evoing into a level 4 unless there's a weird reason why you need to. It is more efficient to use a wisdom training, grab 2 cards, and then use that to go into your level 4 for free on your next turn. It's the same amount of memory, but you end up just netting more cards in your hand. It's way better. I think I misspoke. You don't grab 2 cards, but you search 2 cards and grab 1, and it's very good. These are just great cards. You want it at 4 for the same reasons you want the purple memory boost, but this is just even better. And finally, we're wrapping up the list with our X-Antibody protoforms. We are running these at 4 because they are that good and you want to see them as much as possible. This card, I think a lot of people have known for a while, is very good, but a lot of decks just aren't able to use it to its full capacity, but I think Leviamon really does. You're able to use it anytime you're evoing it into a level 4, level 5, or level 6 that has the X-Antibody trait, which you have a lot of those. That's why the deck was built this way, is to synergize with this proto form. It will reduce the cost by 1, and then will, when that card is removed from the field, it will allow you to recover the X-Antibody protoform and then grab something out of the traits sources for that card that you might want. So say you want your Garurumon X-Antibody back, or you need another Cerberusmon X, you can just grab that back out. Very, very good. This card is also, it just acts as an X-Antibody, so it lets you trigger your Leviamon X on your level 5s. So that's very good, and overall just a very strong card. If you wanted to, you could run 3 of this and 1 of the old X-Antibody so that you can pull off plays like being able to do the pseudo blitz that X-Antibody gives you, where you swing and then evo, but I think I prefer just having the memory efficiency, and I am a big fan of this card. Let's talk about some tech choices you can make for the deck. There is room in the deck for you to run the Biting Crush if you really want it. It is a very good card in some matchups, so if you are just seeing a lot of Leviamon or a lot of the new Terriermon, Lopmon deck, those are decks that rely a lot on playing cards by effects. So this card can be very good because it is just, you just need these 2 pieces, you just play it, trash your Leviamon, and then whenever they play a card by effect, you play your Leviamon for free, and you have a free level 6. That's a very strong combo, and it can sometimes just be enough to close out your opponent to where they don't want to make their own plays. My only concern with it is that 8 memory is a lot to give your opponent, and sometimes it's enough to where they can just evo in the back all the way up anyways, and just play the deck traditionally instead of using all of their effects, and sometimes that can just win them the game, and you're just down 2 cards in hand, which feels pretty bad. So I'm not as huge a fan of it, but it definitely does have utility, and if you wanted to make space for the Biting Crushes, you could definitely maybe cut a Psychemon, and you could probably cut 2 Memboosts and then throw in 3 Biting Crushes into the deck, and that's definitely a consideration worth making. The reason I don't think Biting Crush is necessary, though, is once again memory efficiency. So let's talk about a pretty reasonable scenario for the deck where you have a Goblimon in the back and 2 Wisdom Trainings on board. This is a pretty standard, maybe you're on turn 2, turn 3, and this is what you have. So in this scenario, you can push out your Goblimon. You will then Wisdom Training into a Garurumon, which will then let you draw 1, trash 1. This is a free evo because of the Wisdom Training. You will gain a memory off of the Goblimon. So far you've gained 1 memory, and then you can evo for free into your Garurumon X-Antibody. This will let you draw 2 more cards, trash 1, and you will also draw off the evo. Then you will gain a memory off of Garurumon X-Antibody. Then you can use your Proto Form to get into a Cerberusmon X-Antibody for 2. And you can play out a Gizamon from that, which then will give the on deletion gain a memory to one of your opponent's Digimon. You can then use your Wisdom Training to evo for 3 into Leviamon. This is your second Wisdom Training. Or if you don't have one, that's fine. You can just evo for 5, and you will usually gain at least 1 memory, but usually 2 off of the Leviamon evo because he will pop bodies, but then you're also gaining an additional memory off of that Gizamon. So that's 3 memory on that evo, so if it was for 3, that is for free. So in this process, you have actually paid 0 memory to get into your Leviamon overall. That is very, very strong for obvious reasons, and that is why I really don't feel the need to be running cards like Biting Crush that it's costing me 8, whereas this has netted me a lot of cards in hand, and I have a free Leviamon that then I can go ahead and swing with for 4 checks, or evo into a Leviamon X to clear even more on board, and then swing for 6 checks. Because you can just pop the Gizamon with the inheritable of Cerberusmon X to unsuspend. This is a crazy strong combo. This is the bread and butter of the deck. You might not have this line exactly, but you will have a similar one because usually Dobermon X can kind of do the same thing in this situation as the Garurumon X combo. Or if you don't have the Gizamon, you can just put out a Gazimon or any sort of Floodgate. It's not going to be quite as memory efficient, but just about. And so it's just very, very strong, and this is usually kind of what you're going to be going for with the deck. We've already talked about these 2 cards a lot, but I just wanted to touch on them one more time. These 2 cards synchronize together really well and kind of replace the Biting Crush combo. You can evo into Leviamon X-Antibody for free a lot of the time because your opponent will play something by an effect. A lot of decks do. or you can just Evo into it yourself. It's a 2-cost Evo off of Leviamon, or even if you have to go into it straight from something else, you can either reduce it with Protoform or with a training. So it's not that big a deal if you have to just go straight into this card. Being able to pop the Tamer is super good, but then popping a level 3, a level 5, level 7 from the Leviamon X, and then as many 7th Lightnings as you have in the trash, you can bottom deck to then pop their level 4 and level 6. So once again, you can do this. If they have multiple level 4s and level 6s, you can bottom deck multiple. Or if they have one that has protection, you just bottom deck multiple and make them use their protection but then delete their card anyways, which feels pretty bad for them and can often be enough to win you the game. So these two cards, super strong, and this is a very good combo that you're going to be using a lot. Another card a lot of people use in the deck that I choose not to is Digimon. I don't think it's a bad card. I actually think it's a very good card, just not in the way that I like to play the deck. Digimon is very good if you are running the Biting Crush version of this deck, because it lets you play out your opponent's level 4, trigger your Biting Crush or your Leviamon X-Antibody, and then play out their level 4, and then you can choose to change your attack target to that. If you're evoing into the Leviamon X, it then gives you the piercing, 3 checks. Very good. I personally just prefer having an unsuspend rather than piercing, because piercing isn't always super relevant in the deck because you're removing the body anyway, so there's not really a reason to pierce over it, and in fact it can cause weird interactions in which you do choose, say, to declare that you're changing the attack target to that body. However, if your Leviamon X comes down and clears that body anyways, what actually happens is instead of that attack target changing back to security, the attack just fizzles. And in competitive play, where people are going to make you stick to that, you've declared that. So you do have to stick with the fact that your attack is just fizzled and you're not getting your 3 checks. And that can cause some annoyance, and you're not going to want that to happen to you. Also, the fact that it is not an X-Antibody and you can't protoform into it is enough to where I don't really want to do it. And that's also why we're not running a ton of Dragomons. It's just not as memory efficient and ultimately not as good as Cerberusmon X-Antibody is in the deck. Now let's talk about some of your toughest matchups a little bit. Most decks you can deal with very efficiently. They will either play into your strategy and you can remove their bodies, or you're just stronger and faster than they are, so you can usually win most matchups. There are a few, though, that can be pretty tough. Emperor Greymon, the red hybrid deck, is just super fast, and sometimes they can just get built up and win before you can do anything, and there's really not much you can do about that. What you need to focus on against this deck is removing bodies as much as you can. It can sometimes seem like they don't really care if you remove bodies, but the truth is that it does slow them down, and it keeps them from just getting more free checks on you. And sometimes what will happen is if you are removing, they'll make a misplay and play out their Flamemon for free from one of their on-deletion effects, and then that can trigger your Leviamon X and pop their board, which can be very good for you. You can also pop Tamers with Leviamon X, which can be very good. They can get them back, but once again, it's about slowing them down enough to where you can then win the game. You're not going to win off of speed if you're not controlling the board, so you need to make that a priority. Fenrir Lugamon is a very interesting matchup because theoretically it's in your favor. They have to play cards by effects in order to facilitate their main combo. However, it is a very fast, very efficient deck, so sometimes they can just get going and win before you have a chance to even get set up. Your main counterplay against Fenrir is to, once again, set up to where you're setting traps to where they can't use their play by effects, or to, if you just happen to draw a lot, and this is why we're using our memory boosts and our wisdom trainings, if you can get those set up quickly enough to where then you can go for a big turn before they're set up and you can just win right there, that is often the strategy. But once again, it's a tough matchup. You both have a lot of things you can do to each other, so it's best to set up traps with the Leviamon X, and also it is nice that your protoform will give you a little bit more reliability in terms of if they do pop your stack, it goes to security, so that's an extra security for you, which is very nice. Devas is a matchup that you will win most of the time if you are fast and lose all of the time if you are slow. If you are not removing their bodies and keeping them from getting into the Fanglong, you are going to lose. Fanglongmon is untouchable by this deck. You do not have an option card that hits level 7s, so you cannot delete it that way, and it is unaffected by the effects of Digimon. So your Leviamons can't touch it, and your option cards can't touch it. So it's an unremovable body, and you can't get big enough to swing over it, because you don't have any DP boosting Digimon in this deck. Your main counterplay against it is to remove their level 5s and level 6s, preferably their level 5s so they can't blast Evo before you do anything. So typically you're going to want to remove their bodies before you swing, and then swing as fast, swing your Leviamon, do your normal strategy, and this is when you want to utilize your Psychemons to prevent them from getting out that Fanglongmon early. It's not an unwinnable matchup, but you just want to make sure they don't get into the Fanglong, because then it's going to either be a very long game, because it is usually has a blocker inheritable, it is very hard to deal with, and is going to clear your board every turn, or it's just you're just not going to win it. So that just about does it for this video. If you have any questions about the deck, feel free to leave a comment. I'll try and answer as best I can. Or if there's any other deck lists you want me to cover, let me know. Thank you for watching. I know this was a bit of a long video, but I appreciate your time. I just wanted to share my thoughts about the deck, as I think it is very strong, and I personally think it's my favorite deck in the meta, maybe up until we get the 7 Great Demon Lords, and even then I'm not convinced that those are actually going to be necessarily better than this deck, but it is very different and might play better into the meta at that point. Have a great day, and thank you for watching.